Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are going to install this Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap intake manifold on our 454 big block Chevy. So the intake we are replacing is a Weiand Action Plus. I'll show you a comparison of the intakes once I have this one off, but first we need to start disassembling, and I'm going to start by draining some coolant out of the radiator.
I made some reference marks on a piece of tape so I could do my best to put the distributor back exactly where I had it before. This was important to me because I'm using timing control with my EFI and I didn't want to do the setup all over again.
So I got the intake manifold off, came off really easily. The cylinder head surface is in really good shape. I don't have to do much cleaning or scraping on that, which is great. I did still cover up the valley with some rags because you don't want anything to fall down into the engine. I still have to scrape off the silicone of the china walls, but once that's all done, I can then put the new intake on. So just a quick comparison between the two intake manifolds. We just pulled off the Weiand Action Plus, and we are moving to the Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap. And aside from the height and the obvious air gap design, there are some significant differences between the two. On the Action Plus, the raised floor is on the right side, whereas on the air gap, it's on the left side. And this allows for some differences in runner lengths between the two designs. The Weiand, the long runner is extremely long, and the short runner is extremely short. Whereas on the air gap, you can see the short runner here is not nearly as short, and the long runner here is slightly shorter, which I feel like this is a much better balance. Now speaking of plenums, you can see I cut down the divider by about 1.5 inches to 2 inches or so on the Action Plus, and I also did a little bit of blending and minor porting just to open it up a little bit. Whereas on the air gap, the divider is already molded in and it's about 1/2 inch or so cut out. What I found interesting is the air gap actually has a smaller plenum volume than the Weiand, and I was a bit surprised by that. Now the Weiand does have larger ports than the Edelbrock. You can also see the difference in shape. This is a little bit more oval, but considering the Edelbrock is supposed to be better for higher RPM, I am surprised just how much bigger the ports are on the Weiand. Some other differences between the manifolds. The thermostat housing is a little offset to the right on the Weiand, whereas it's a little more centered in the air gap. The sensor, you can see this one's a low sensor here and a high sensor here. This boss right there is not drilled out on the air gap. Instead, this sensor will have to go here, and this sensor will go here. The vacuum port is on a high runner in the back here, whereas on the Edelbrock, it's on a low runner right here. I do not know what these two ports are right here, but Edelbrock does give you a couple plugs to put in them if you don't plan to use them, so I will be plugging those ports. And because I'm always curious about weight, I did weigh them both in the exact form that you see here, and it turns out they are the exact weight of 19.3 pounds. Exactly. Which, I guess once the Edelbrock gets the studs and sensors moved over, it will be slightly heavier by a few grams, but despite all the design changes and whatnot, essentially they are the same weight.
I used Teflon tape and some Permatex aviation forma gasket to ensure no coolant leaks. Put a very thin coating of silicone around the coolant ports just to ensure there are no leaks. I used Permatex high-tack spray a gasket to adhere the Velcro gasket to the cylinder head. This prevents the gasket from moving while you set the intake manifold in place. Another thin layer of silicone on the gasket side as well. For silicone, I'm using Permatex Ultra Gray. A thick bead of silicone along the china wall. I used my finger to stuff the silicone in the corners to prevent leaks. Don't leave any rags in the ports before installing the intake. The intake went on nice, very little adjustment needed. I put a dab of silicone on the 4 center bolts as well as the bolts next to the coolant ports. This prevents leaks through the threads and acts as a form of Loctite. I snugged the intake down by hand and then torqued it down in a sequence shown in the instructions in 2 steps, 15 foot-pounds and then 25 foot-pounds. Being the idiot that I am, I forgot to install the alternator bracket. Reinstalling the distributor actually took some fiddling around to get it exactly the way I had it before. This is the reason for making the reference marks. Then it was time to reassemble the rest of it. I always do an oil change before my first start of the year. I use Driven HR5 conventional 10W40. Well, it doesn't look like there's any leaks, so we can put the air cleaner back on. Lastly, we'll test to make sure there's clearance to the hood. Fully shut. Plenty of clearance. So a big block Chevy with a air gap, 1-inch spacer, and a Phytech drop base air cleaner, and a raised upper part of the air cleaner. Fits no problem. So we're on a maiden voyage, and everything seems to be checking out okay. I thought the tune might be a little off because, you know, obviously we changed intakes, but so far everything's feeling really good. I'd say about the same, if not better than it was, which is, you know, really exciting. I haven't gotten on the throttle at all yet because, you know, I'm just making sure everything's checking out. But so far so good. Temperature, this is interesting. I switched that bypass hose to one that isn't crimped, and now my temperatures are like 148, 150 degrees. Like, it is running cold. And yeah, it is still cold out because winter will never go away here. But it's something I'm going to keep an eye on as the temperatures heat up going into the summer months. Will my cooling issues be somehow solved? So I'll be checking in on that later. As for power, I'm not going to notice much of a difference, but I mean, I can see if it's as responsive as it was. I'd say it's about the same. Do
Do I expect to see much of a difference just driving around and cruising? No, not really. But I do plan to get it on the dyno and definitely to the track just to see if this intake made any more power. It'd be sure nice to always set some new personal bests. But if you want to see that, you're going to have to subscribe and be sure to like this video. And as always, thanks for watching.